My name is Rhea Marlowe, 33 years old, senior behavioral data engineer at Echelon Dynamics, a Seattle tech firm that loves buzzwords more than people. I'm the kind of employee who keeps her head down and her code clean better with algorithms than with applause. I believed hard work spoke for itself. That belief ended this morning. I reached the glass lobby just before 9, coffee still steaming, ready for a day that would end with the company's Innovation Awards gala. My name had been whispered as a finalist for months. When I stepped off the elevator, I saw the CEO, Celine Hart, gliding out of the conference room in a slate gray suit. "Celine," I said, forcing a smile. "Quick question, what time does the awards event start tonight?" She paused mid-stride, her lipstick unshaken. "Oh, Rhea," she said lightly. "Didn't anyone tell you?" It was yesterday? For a second, I thought I'd misheard. Yesterday. Her smile didn't fade. The company's biggest night. You must have missed the memo. Laughter drifted from the hallway, someone showing photos on a phone. My junior engineer, Dylan, in a tuxedo beside the prototype I built. The same project I'd named Predicta. My throat went dry. Celine's heels clicked away across the marble floor. I stood there, heat crawling up my neck, then walked straight to my desk. The open office shimmered with morning light and indifference. Screens glowed, keyboards clacked, and no one looked at me. I sat down, opened my laptop, and pulled up the folder I'd kept for months. Commit logs, dated prototypes, internal messages. I wasn't sure if I was angry or calm. Maybe both. My fingers moved before my thoughts caught up. Subject intellectual property breach. Recipients executive board, legal, investors. 4 attachments, each one a fact they couldn't erase. I hovered over the word send. The cursor blinked like a heartbeat. Click. The screen froze for half a second. Then the email vanished into the cloud. One breath. Then my phone began to buzz once, twice, and then non-stop. I didn't pick it up. Instead, I looked at the project photo still open on my screen. Dylan smiling under bright lights and began closing every file, one by one. The next morning, the office smelled of champagne and leftover celebration. Someone had left a stack of gold programs by the reception desk, Echelon Dynamics Innovation Awards 2025, the same event I'd been told didn't exist. My stomach tightened when I caught sight of a photo on the front cover, the Predicta interface glowing on a massive screen, beneath a name that wasn't mine. I walked to my cubicle in silence. The lights felt harsher than usual, humming above my head. Conversations stopped when I passed, screens minimized in a hurry. On the far wall, the winner's board flickered through slides of smiling faces and polished trophies. My chair scraped faintly as I sat. The sound sharp in the hush that followed. Across the aisle, Dylan was showing his phone to a small crowd. He looked up for half a second, caught my eye, and then pretended to adjust his sleeve. The photo he'd posted was already making its rounds, him shaking hands with Celine on stage. The caption, reading grateful to lead the Predicta project alongside our brilliant team. The words pressed against my chest like a bruise. Lead the project. He'd joined 6 months ago. I'd spent 2 years building that framework from scratch, hundreds of nights fine-tuning micro-gesture tracking, mapping sentiment curves, teaching an algorithm to feel without feeling anything myself. I clicked open an old draft in my inbox. Thank you for nominating me. It had been waiting there for weeks, full of names I thought would congratulate me. I hovered for a moment, then hit delete. Around noon, a colleague stopped by my desk with a tight smile. Rhea, you should have been there. Everyone was talking about how amazing it looked. I nodded, unable to form a response. When she left, I stared at the empty chair beside me, the one we'd saved for new hires that never stayed long. The hum of conversation returned, soft but steady. I took a slow breath, turned off the photo slideshow, and opened a blank document. If they'd erased my name once, I'd make sure there was something left they couldn't touch. Before Predicta became a product with a stage and a spotlight, it was just me and a few others crammed into a converted warehouse near South Lake Union. We worked past midnight most nights, eating instant ramen from paper cups, chasing an idea we thought might change the way people and machines understood each other. Back then, no one cared about titles. We shared code, coffee, and dreams. When Victor Laird joined, everything shifted. He arrived one Monday morning in a charcoal suit and a cologne that didn't belong in a startup. Director of Product Strategy. His email signature read, he had an easy charm, the kind that made people listen before he'd said anything. At first, I was impressed. He knew how to talk about technology as if it were magic. Investors loved him. He stopped by my desk one afternoon, glancing at the behavioral model running on my screen. You've got something special here. Ria, he said. But we need to make people feel it. Leave the storytelling to me. I thought it was partnership. It wasn't. Within weeks, he started repackaging my prototype into slick presentations my algorithms renamed, my code framed as a collaborative architecture. During the next investor meeting, he stood before a projector, voice smooth as glass, describing Predicta as the company's shared vision. I sat in the back, heart hammering, as my diagrams filled the screen. My name wasn't mentioned once. Afterward, I went to HR. The woman behind the desk didn't look up from her monitor. All intellectual property created under company hours belongs to Echelon. She recited, credit allocation is a team matter. The door clicked shut behind me like a verdict. Over the months that followed, my fingerprints vanished from every presentation. Victor's name appeared on the press release drafts. I became the quiet one in the corner, answering questions, fixing bugs, watching my work walk into rooms I wasn't invited to enter. Still, I told myself to wait. Wait for fairness, for recognition, for someone to notice. But with every passing week, the waiting turned into silence, and the silence began to feel permanent. I stopped waiting for fairness the day Victor's photo appeared on the company homepage under the headline, Meet the Minds Behind Predicta. By then, I'd learned how the game was played. Credit wasn't earned. It was negotiated, and I was done negotiating. That evening, when the office lights dimmed and the others headed out for drinks, I stayed behind. I opened every old commit log, every prototype file, and saved them to an external drive. I wasn't stealing. I was reclaiming the trail I'd already made. Each timestamp, each build ID, each email thread that showed when the framework began and whose hands wrote its foundation. The folder grew heavier by the hour, filling with evidence of a ghost still haunting her own creation. I called the folder rebuild not as a threat, but as a promise. On weekends, I carried my laptop to a small cafe near the Fremont Bridge. The place smelled of roasted beans and wet cedar, its windows looking out over the water. I'd claim the same corner table every Saturday morning, plug in my headphones, and disappear. There, away from the company's fluorescent glow, I began writing something new. The idea was simple, sharper, more alive than Predicta had ever been, a system that could interpret emotional tone in real time, translating micro-gestures and vocal inflection into adaptive response. I called it NeuroLattice, a neural mesh that could think in patterns of empathy. I coded until my fingers cramped, until my coffee went cold. Every keystroke felt like stitching together pieces of myself that Echelon had stripped away. For the first time in months, I wasn't writing for them. I was writing for me. When the cafe closed, the barista would tap my shoulder gently, and I'd realize it was already dark outside. I'd save my progress, encrypt the folder, and watch the lights shimmer across the bridge before heading home. My hands still trembled when I locked my laptop, but it wasn't from fear anymore. It was the pulse of something waking up quiet, deliberate, and unstoppable. It was a Thursday night when I decided to stop going straight home after work. The company had organized another casual happy hour at the Copper Still, a narrow bar tucked behind Pike Street, all dark wood and golden light. I didn't plan to stay long, just enough to remind everyone I was still there, still visible. The room was thick with conversation and the smell of gin. Music pulsed under the chatter. I found a small table near the corner, half hidden behind a tall plant where I could watch without being noticed. I ordered a tonic, no gin, and opened my phone, pretending to scroll through emails. An hour in, laughter rose from the back booth near the bar. I recognized Victor's voice, immediately smooth, confident, the kind that filled any space it entered. Across from him sat Elena Park, the CEO's new protégé, her hair tied neatly, a glass of white wine glowing between her fingers. Their words drifted through the low hum of the crowd, just clear enough to reach me. "You did great in that demo," Victor said. "The board loved it. They think you're the face of Predicta now." Elena gave a small, uneasy laugh. "But it's Ria's framework, not mine. She wrote the behavioral mesh. I only helped polish the interface." Victor leaned back, swirling his drink. "Talent builds, politics decides. You're smart, connected, and presentable. That's how the game works." There was a pause long enough for me to feel the weight of his words settle into the air. Elena looked down, tracing the rim of her glass. "It doesn't feel right." "Right," he echoed, smiling. "Right doesn't pay salaries. Results do." My fingers tightened around my phone. Without thinking, I tapped the record button. The voices continued soft, careless, honest. I stayed perfectly still, heart beating in rhythm with the bass line from the speakers. When they left, I slipped out a few minutes later, the night air cold against my face. I didn't go home. I walked to the cafe by the bridge, opened my laptop, and dragged a new file into the rebuild folder. Audio 2309 bar conversation, MP3. For the first time, I had their words unedited, undeniable. The email left my outbox at 7:04 p.m. on a Wednesday. By 7:06, the first reply landed in my inbox legal department. "We need to discuss this immediately." Then another from Victor. "What did you just do?" Cellini's arrived last, short and composed. "Let's talk first thing tomorrow." I didn't answer any of them. I sat there for a while, watching the city lights stretch across the windows of Echelon's tower. It felt almost peaceful, like the quiet after a storm. Then I packed my laptop, walked out without saying goodnight, and didn't look back. Rain followed me home, steady and cold. My apartment was dark except for the blue light of my screen. I poured a glass of water, opened my personal email, and there it was, the confirmation from the U.S. Patent Office. Provisional filing received Neurolattice Adaptive Framework. Applicant Ria Marlowe, dated 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks before the gala, before the laughter, before Celine's smile. For months, I'd built that safety net quietly, unsure if I'd ever need to use it. Now it was my line of defense, my name, my proof, my work. Thunder rolled somewhere over Lake Union. I opened the rebuild folder and played the audio file from the bar. The sound was muffled but clear enough, Victor's voice. Smooth and certain. Talent builds, politics decides. I listened once, then closed the laptop. I didn't need to hear it again. Sleep didn't come easily. Every vibration from my phone felt like a threat, but also a strange kind of freedom. No more pretending. No more waiting. By morning, my access badge blinked red at the office door. My email credentials failed. On the shared drive, my name had vanished from the project list. They'd erased me completely. I stood in the lobby, drenched from the rain, and realized I didn't feel panic. I felt space room to breathe, to move, to start again without permission. They'd shut me out of their system. But for the first time in years, I finally had my own. Celine chose a cafe in the middle of downtown quiet, discreet, the kind of place where people ended partnerships over polite smiles. When I walked in, she was already there, framed by the window light, her coat draped over the chair like she owned the room. She waved me over with a warmth that felt rehearsed. "Ria," she began, her voice low and steady. "You've caused quite a stir." I sat opposite her, the smell of roasted beans cutting through the tension. She folded her hands. "You're brilliant. You know that. What you built is extraordinary. But this," she gestured vaguely, "this patent situation, it complicates things. We don't want lawyers involved. We want solutions." I waited. She smiled the way she had the morning she told me the awards had already happened. "Come back," she said. "You'll have your old role. plus a promotion director of behavioral systems. Double salary. We'll take care of the paperwork. All you have to do is withdraw the patent filing. We'll list you as a co-inventor. It was a perfect corporate compromise flattery tied to silence. I stirred my coffee, listening to the rain tapping against the window. You mean, I said, you'll pay me to give up my own work? Celine's eyes narrowed just slightly. No one wants to fight. Rhea, you're too talented to end up in a courtroom. I'm not the one who started this, I said. For a second, she almost looked sorry. Then her expression smoothed. Think about it, she said, standing. You have 48 hours. By evening, my inbox held a new message. Notice of intellectual property infringement. The company's legal signature glared at the bottom. My stomach twisted as I wired the retainer to an attorney I could barely afford. For a long time. I sat in the dim light of my apartment, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, wondering if I'd gone too far. Then I opened my laptop. Neurolattice loaded in silence. I scrolled through lines of code, fingers moving faster than doubt. If they wanted a war, I'd fight it the only way I knew, by building something they couldn't break. The office wasn't much, 2 small rooms above a coffee roaster in Fremont, with windows that fogged every morning and a hum of machinery rising from the cafe below. The smell of burnt espresso clung to everything. But it was mine. I'd hired one part-time developer, Asha, a quiet woman who used to manage QA at a rival startup before they downsized. We worked shoulder to shoulder at mismatched desks, surviving on cheap takeout and too much caffeine. On good days, we forgot how precarious it all was. The break came on a Tuesday afternoon when an email arrived from a Portland-based e-commerce firm, Lunaris Retail. They'd seen an early demo of Neurolattice through a mutual contact and wanted a 2-week pilot. Small-scale, limited integration, nothing glamorous. But it was a start. We signed the agreement that night. I remember holding the printed copy under the flickering kitchen light in the cafe below, tracing my name at the bottom as though it might vanish if I blinked too long. The following days blurred together, testing data streams, fixing memory leaks, watching metrics tick upward on dashboards that never slept. By the end of the second week, Lunaris's engagement numbers had jumped 32%. They called it uncanny. We called it proof. Word spread faster than I expected. 2 angel investors reached out within days, curious about the new adaptive analytics framework from Seattle. That same week, I read a headline that Echelon Dynamics had lost its biggest retail client, Lunaris. The irony didn't hit me right away. When it did, I didn't smile. I just exhaled. The office hummed late into the night, the radiator clanking against the cold. Asha fell asleep on her keyboard more than once, and I covered her with my coat. When I stepped outside, the air tasted of coffee and rain, and for the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. I'd been erased, replaced, and threatened. But here, above a roaster in a room that smelled of grit and heat, I'd built something no one could take. It wasn't victory. It was breath. The message arrived on a quiet Thursday morning, buried between invoices and client updates. From Celine Hart. Subject, let's talk. No legal threats this time. No posturing, just 3 words that sounded almost human. I met her the next day in Echelon's new downtown tower, a glass fortress that caught the rain and turned it silver. Walking through the lobby felt like stepping back into a version of my life that no longer fit. The receptionist smiled nervously when she saw me, as if unsure which side of the story to believe. Celine was waiting in a conference room with a skyline view, all steel and reflection. She looked smaller somehow, her posture still perfect, but her confidence worn at the edges. On the table between us sat a white envelope, its weight too deliberate to ignore. "I'll get straight to it," she said. "The board wants to make this right. We're offering to acquire Neurolattice full integration, full credit, triple your current salary. You'd head the entire behavioral division. You deserve that." Her tone softened. "Rhea, you were always the heart of this technology. I'm sorry it took us this long to admit it. I picked up the envelope. Inside was a printed offer, signatures already waiting for mine. The numbers were impressive, almost absurd. But what struck me most wasn't the money, it was the careful phrasing. Every sentence crafted to erase history. I folded the papers neatly, slid them back into the envelope, and set it on the table. "You can't buy back what you buried," I said quietly, for a moment. She didn't move. Then she nodded, just once, as if she'd expected that answer. Outside, the rain came down harder, streaking across the glass as I walked toward the elevator. My phone vibrated in my pocket, 2 new messages from investors, one from Lunaris, another from a firm in Chicago. By the time I reached the street, the city smelled of wet asphalt and possibility. I didn't open the umbrella. I let the rain fall and kept walking. A year can change everything. The office above the coffee roaster was long gone, replaced by a wide corner space overlooking Lake Union white walls, bright light, and the steady rhythm of a company that finally breathed on its own. The name Neurolattice glowed softly on the glass door. We had grown from 2 people to 48, engineers, analysts, designers, each one someone who'd once been told they were not quite leadership material. Now, they were building something far bigger than the framework that started it all. That morning, I stood backstage at the Seattle Behavioral Tech Summit, holding a small note card I didn't need. The auditorium beyond the curtain shimmered with soft light and quiet conversation. When my name was announced, the applause felt distant, almost unreal. I walked onto the stage wearing jeans and a green sweater, the same color as the walls in our first office. No blazer, no badge. Behind me, the presentation screen lit up with one sentence in bold white letters. "Innovation means building the table you were never invited to sit at." The audience fell silent. I told them about the early days, the long nights, the mistakes, the small victories that no one clapped for. I spoke about what happens when credit becomes currency, and how creation loses its soul when recognition becomes the only goal. Halfway through, my eyes caught a familiar figure near the back. Celine Hart sat with her hands folded, her expression unreadable. She didn't look angry or proud, just quiet. When I reached the final slide, I paused and smiled. "They said the award night was yesterday." I said, "I made sure the future isn't." The room stood as one, the sound rising like a wave that carried no bitterness, only release. Later, outside in the cold air, I watched the city lights scatter across the water. Somewhere behind those reflections was the version of me who waited by a locked door, hoping someone would let her in. I didn't wait anymore. I'd built my own door, and the table behind it was already full.